Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Gustavo David Ortiz, commercial real estate entrepreneur. And today we had a really great session with Hedman Posada, who is a local residential real estate agent in the area. And we chatted about marketing to internet leads. So I thought this was a really great session, had some great nuggets in there. So if that's something that's relevant to you or someone that you know, I'd love for you to, make any comments down below. Make sure you share, you like, and of course, I'd love for you to subscribe. Anyways, here is our conversation. I look forward to hearing from you guys.
For the people out there in the ether, just introduce yourself, what you do, what your specialization is, and we'll kind of get into the nuts and bolts.
Okay, fantastic. So my name is Germán Posada. I am a real estate consultant here in the Central Florida area. And the reason why I am here is because, thank God, I've been successful. I've been growing my business and trying to go from entrepreneurial to purposeful and get a little bit more predictive with my business. I'm trying to implement internet lead generation as a source of growth for my business to the other things that I was doing to get a little bit more predictability with my business and to take it to the next level. So
That's awesome.
um, I'm on my third year, so I've been a solo agent from the beginning. I was a capper last year. I just barely capped. This year, I capped in about one quarter of the time I'm about to cap. And so I'm seeing a lot of growth. I'm pouring into my business on the education side, but also on the growth side. And so I reached out to you guys, somebody that I admire
Thank you. I
because
appreciate it.
of your charisma, your professionalism, and obviously your record of success. And so if you're trying to get somewhere, talk to people that have done it. So here
Okay,
I am.
cool. So for now, what we're going to be talking about today, I think is going to apply to really just about any business, specifically service-based business, I guess more specifically, like kind of what we do. I myself, obviously, I'm focusing on the commercial real estate side of things, while your focus is residential. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
All right. So you mentioned earlier that you capped, and for those folks that are not in the real estate world, and specifically not in Keller Williams, capping means that in real estate, typically the broker takes a portion of the commission as an exchange of some services and support offered. When you Keller Williams specifically has a cap where they don't take more than X dollars. Once you reach that cap, then everything above that is 100% you keep as part of your business. And the fact that you've reached cap means that you've been able to you've been successful, which is awesome. That means that you've done enough business where not only have you reached that number, but everything you make after that, you keep 100% of the proceeds on, which is amazing. So congratulations on that. I think that's fantastic. So
Thank you.
um, I've been it's been awesome to kind of like see you and others and myself like grow and in this business and all the wonderful things that are happening. So it's amazing that I'm honored that you give me a call and ask about some of this stuff. So this is awesome experience for me personally. So I really appreciate that. Um, you mentioned internet leads. So talk to me a little bit about what that means for you. Like when you say you want to generate more internet leads, there's a number of different ways to interpret that. So do you have something in particular that you're thinking about doing that you want to leverage?
Yeah, so there's a couple of avenues that I'm exploring right now. So through our system, we have something the lead accelerator, which is something that can generate uh, contacts from the internet where you place an ad and people click on it, they give you their information, and now you have somebody to talk to and explore certain opportunities. Um, I was working with a company called Estate Nurture. They really haven't delivered on the promise, and I'll take some ownership on not being as attentive on it. They were supposed to help you grow through social media
Hmm.
and to generate more interest on that, but it just hasn't worked. So now, as we do trial and error, as everything as business owners, and we're not satisfied with the results, and so now I have to look at the next thing. And so there are a million partners, as you know,
Yeah,
uh, in telling you that they're the next best thing since sliced bread. But I think that the biggest lesson from this first company that I worked with was that I didn't have a tight process in this type of lead generation as
yeah,
I may have with clients that come in through open houses, through natural market,
sure.
uh, sphere of influence, and other sources.
Right, it's a much
So,
colder lead.
right. So, in order, when it requires an investment and seeing that I haven't been effective with it, is how do I create a system so that when the next best thing comes, I'm ready to tackle it and be more effective with it.
Yeah, no, that I think that's a good point. There are like you said, there's a million services that are out there, and kind of what I've found is with those services is that they all may be great, right? But part of what makes them work or not work is how you connect with them in terms of what you're doing in your business and how that translates at the end of the day, for what you're doing. So, in some cases, this whatever company you just used just didn't click with you, right? It just wasn't something and that happens. Sometimes they may be great for another agent, but they didn't necessarily click with you. So to sit down and really evaluate that and recognize that, I think that's great. That really helps to weed out the stuff that's not working, and then give you the opportunity to double down on stuff that might be working. So so it sounds to me like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like you've had some really good successes with engaging with people in open houses, and like when you're able to talk to them personally. But these colder leads are a little bit more challenging because you don't have the advantage of establishing any sort of relationship with them in these other contexts. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So this is I think a challenge for anyone who gets internet leads in general, because they're so impersonal. Most of the time, the person who's trying to get the internet lead, they just want information. They're not trying to talk to anyone. They don't want to have a salesperson or anything like that. So to wait for to have to even submit email information or anything like that, they're like annoyed. They're like, oh, I just want to, I just want the price of the home. I just want the to know the details of the widget, whatever it is, right? So you have to kind of play softball with them for a little while. What's worked for me is a combination of things. If you can gather some of their information, creating an email campaign obviously is super helpful. If you can do a combination email and text message, that's usually super helpful. And then if you get that person via, let's say, Facebook, for example, or Instagram, if you can engage with them on those platforms, those are also good as well. Now, my email campaigns tend to be a little different than a lot of agents out there, and it may be also very similar to a lot of agents. I'm sure there's a lot of agents doing the same thing. I don't think I'm necessarily inventing anything new. Um, what I do is I focus a lot. Like I try to think about who am I talking to? Like what is this person? Who is this person? I try to imagine what this person looks like. Some people call this like avatar creation, right? Where you kind of create a fake person that kind of represents the type of person that's looking online for a home, right? And then I
Hmm.
identify what that avatar looks like, what they sound like, what their family dynamics might be like, all that good stuff, right? And then try to think about like they're busy, they're doing their thing, they're just having to click on something. Typically, depending on the internet lead too, will depend on like where they are in the process. So for example, a Facebook internet lead typically is a long tail lead. So you're probably not going to see a conversion on that lead for 9 to 12 months. That's very normal for Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, because what you're doing is you're doing kind of like an inception, right? You remember the movie Inception?
Yes, I do.
So you kind of put in their mind that there's something, and then you kind of make it their idea. So like that's what Facebook and Instagram is good for, is kind of like inception. Those kinds of platforms are great because you're kind of creating, they're not thinking about necessarily buying a home. And then you kind of, your ad shows up and then kind of gives them the idea that maybe buying a home may be something to consider, right? And then now they're like, oh, well, maybe it is. Let me go ahead and see what that home looks like, right? Because there's a home that popped up or showed up or something like that, right? And they decide then that sorry, let me put my phone on silent before it starts ringing and starts acting crazy. So they may not necessarily be thinking about that, but now they got the idea and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I just saw this house, it's for sale, let me go look at it and see what's okay. Yeah, maybe I get a house, maybe, right? It sounds like a cool idea. So you're kind of putting that idea in their minds. So they're not ready to talk to anyone. They're way far away from that. They're just like it literally, the idea just popped in their head, right? Versus, let's say, a Google search. If you're able to get someone through a Google search, they're actively searching for something, and then you popped up. So that's someone who's a little bit, that's going to be much more engaged and interested to talk to someone and engage with someone than someone on, let's say, Facebook or Instagram. So you got to think about, like, how are you gathering their information, and what process did they do? What did they do to get in front of you? If they did nothing to get in front of you, or for you to get in front of them, rather, I'm sorry, for you to get in front of them, if they did nothing for you to get in front of them, then that is someone who you're essentially introducing an idea to. If they took an action, right, and because of that action, you got in front of them, they're actively seeking something that put you in front of them. Those people are what I would consider much warmer than the other. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you're talking to each of those two types of people, and again, there may be variations even more so as you kind of get into the different kinds of internet leads, but we're just going to use those two as sort of general examples. When you're looking at those two examples, you want to talk to them very differently. So the person that's on Facebook, really, you want to kind of like, you want them dream thinking, right? You want them to be like inspired by the idea of buying a home and what that could mean and how possible it is and all that stuff. So any content that you send to them needs to be along those lines. You need to be thinking about, okay, well, they're coming from me from Facebook. You want to be kind of like inspirational in the content that you create for them. And I like to try to make, when I do my email campaigns, I try my hardest to make as evergreen content as possible. So in other words, evergreen content is content that you don't have to change. Or, I mean, I guess you can arguably say, you don't have to change often, right? You can probably keep it for a year or two without having to make any changes to it, and it's still relevant, right? So usually resources are a good thing. So for example, as it relates to home sales, you might want to talk about not necessarily interest rates, but you may want to talk about maybe loan programs that might be beneficial to them, whether that's through USDA loans, 100%, those 100% financing loans. There's all kinds of like buyer assisted programs like NACA, right? Where they can join a program, they take a class, and they help them with their down payment or something like that. Like there's all kinds of programs like that. Those are the kinds of things that really are not going to change. And if they do change, you're not presenting the details of the program. You're introducing them to the idea that this exists. Because a lot of people don't even know that this exists. And for someone who's on Facebook, who you just introduced the idea of buying a home, who might be thinking, yeah, that's a great idea, but I couldn't afford to do that. Introducing this 100% financing or this NACA program all of a sudden changes that. Right now they're thinking, oh, maybe this is more possible than I thought, right? So, and then you start, you combine that with maybe some other like, interior design ideas and, what to do with a yard and, these kind of cool things to do with a home. Like if I had a house, what would I do with it, right? That's the kind of thing that you want to be showing. your Facebook people, and then become a resource for that too, because they're wanting to do that. Another cool thing to do, and I never took advantage of this, and I think it's something that I thought of, but just never got around to doing it. There are a number of apartment communities that they will do like a savings plan as part of the rental, where when the person rents from them, that they will give them back some of the money they put into their rent to go back into the purchase of a home. Now, I don't know the details of that program, but that would be a great example of that, right? There's another program that and I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a group of investors. They have a company, and what they do is for someone who's not ready to buy a home right now because maybe they have credit issues or they don't have the cash or whatever, they just want to rent, but they would like to eventually purchase. They have a rent to own program. So the investors buy the home with the agreement of the potential buyer to rent that home, right? And then that buyer has, for the first 5 years, they have the first right of refusal to purchase. They have the right to buy. In other words, it's like a lease option that's built into their rental contract, right? So essentially, what's good about that is that two things for that particular program is you get to be the agent to help them find a home, or if they're going to buy that home, right? Whatever. And if they decide, so let's say they decide they don't want to buy that home, but they want to buy another home, right? You are the agent to sell the home for the investors. So you become the listing agent on that side as well. So there's some benefit to that, but I digress. The goal here is to get them dream thinking. So any content you're creating is going to be dream thinking. So with that, again, I create an email campaign. Typically, I want to contact them. We have a 36 touch, for example, in KW, right? But that doesn't all have to be emails. I don't like them to be emails. Usually, I do about 12 emails at most, and then the rest of my touches are usually going to be primarily. I would say I wouldn't say primarily. I'll say maybe half of them are text, and the other half are voicemail. So the 50% of them are email, and then the other 50% is split between text message and phone calls, right? So, and I usually the phone calls I try to do those towards the end of my sort of window that I'm thinking, especially if I can get a good idea of kind of time frame that they're considering a home. So, if they're considering a home in next year, then maybe I make a phone call, like a month or two in, but I won't really make heavy phone calls until much later in the year when I'm starting to try to get hey, you had mentioned that, next year, we're getting on the end of the year. Are you still thinking about, making a move, for 2021 or whatever the year that's coming up, right? So that's how I set up that. That's how I would set up that particular campaign. And, obviously with KW Smart Plans, you can totally set that up without a problem. Are you using now? That system does have the text message option. Are you using that, or are just using your phone for texting?
Yeah, right now everything there is zero automation right now.
Okay, so I would definitely say that you're going to want to go in there and really create. When I say go in there, like, there are already smart plans that are in there that you can literally just like. What's great about the KW platform, and I know that everyone watching this doesn't have a KW platform, but that's fine. But the KW platform in particular, they have smart plans that are created by other agents that you can like just look through. And some of those plans are great plans. They don't have to be exactly the way that I'm talking about, but some of those plans are great plans that I would definitely look into implementing. I like to be contextual in terms of how I create my smart plans. So, for example, we just talked about Facebook. A Google search plan for an internet lead would be completely different. I would treat them the same way or similarly to more similar to someone who's like going to an open house who's interested in buying, right? That they're actively searching, right? They're actively doing something to find you. So for that type of person, the kind of content that I would create, I would still include some programs and stuff like that, but it's going to be more like, hey, what other resources can I give you, right? hey, have you checked out new construction? Well, here's my new construction portal, so you can look at new construction options. Here's how I can help you. This is why, like, I have an email that says, the title of the email says, you don't need a realtor to buy new construction. That's the title of the email, right? You don't need, and I put need in caps, you don't need a realtor to purchase new construction, right? But then when you get into the email says, the email is basically, I make a case for why you'd want one. Because the truth is, they don't need a realtor, right? They don't need one, but they would, I would say the lion's share of people want a realtor to help them get through that transaction, because they need someone to at least give them some perspective on the process, to make sure that the agent or the builder is doing the things that they're supposed to do, that there's an expectation that's going to be, that they should be held to, right? And that there's someone there to sort of be a bulldog in the event that the builder is not doing what they're supposed to do, right? So you want to kind of create an email to really make a case for why it is that they want to have an agent. For that one, I actually created a video in addition to that. So I have a sort of a longer email, and then I have a video in addition to that, so they can choose to take the content whatever way is easier for them. But I like to do that. That's a good example for me of giving them some value, where in the email there's a link that's at the bottom that says, hey, check out the my portal, so you can see all the new construction. Are you using the new construction portals?
Yeah, like the new home.
Yeah, new home
Yeah.
source, stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay. So so I basically, I do that video, I do an email that kind of makes an argument for why they'd want to have an agent. And I even say that, you say there, listen, whether you use me or use someone else, you want to have an agent. So the perspective that I'm coming from is, listen, I'm going to counsel you right now. And my counsel is, you need to have an agent going into this deal. It doesn't have to be me, but you want to have an agent going into this deal. Now, the reason why I say it doesn't have to be me, because I don't want them to think that I'm just trying to sell them for my own benefit, right?
Right.
I'm trying to just give them a consultation. If they feel comfortable with me, great. Most people feel comfortable moving forward with me because they like that I'm giving them all this additional info. But they may not. So you just know that sometimes you're going to have that. Sometimes you're going to have people that, they're going to use their best friend who just started real estate yesterday. And then whatever happens there. So providing resources to someone who is kind of looking, that is the direction that I would go, specifically with someone who's ready to go. Now on Facebook, you may find someone that's like, yeah, I'm actively looking for a home, I just haven't connected with a real estate agent. So it's possible that you do run into someone like that, and you're going to need to shift gears and make sure that you're sending them the right stuff. You don't need to send that person a dreamscape of what their new home looks like. They already have it and they're actively searching. They just happen to connect with you on Facebook. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So so anyone who's actively searching, you want to provide them resources. You want to be sort of the resource person to make sure that they're connecting, you're connecting the right dots for them. And that's going to be like stuff, people that are, they're looking for stuff like, oh, is it a flood zone, or are there sinkholes and stuff like that? Like a good resource for that is like, hey, listen, talk to your home insurance broker. Like if someone was not sure about, oh, I don't know if it's a flood zone or whatever, or if it's going to require, some kind of a flood insurance or something like that, right? I don't know, someone's doing some, I don't know, can you hear that in the
Nope.
background? It's like drilling. If you can't hear it, then that's good. There's like drilling happening in the background. I'm not sure where it's coming from. Anyways, if you can identify where they are in the process, then you can make sure you're providing them with good resources. What I was saying about insurance companies is like their home insurance company, or if you have somebody that, like I was working with someone. I still work with him. He's my insurance agent. But whenever we look for a home and they were concerned about flood insurance, I would contact my insurance person and I'd be like, hey, listen, can you give me a report and an estimate on this home? And then I send them their information so that he can go ahead and forward them a whole report on the home, whether or not it requires flood insurance or any other insurances or anything like that, and included a quote for what the homeowner's insurance would be. So great value, right? Doesn't cost anything. you're working with a partner to kind of help provide some some resources, some support, some service, right? So that is a really great tool to use, and that's something that I would certainly include in an email. That's something that you can include as part of your content. Now, a trick that I use that I still use is I part of my automation is I include a text message to follow an email. So, for example, if I sent an email about the new home construction, for example, I might also task myself or automatically have an email sent or to the text message sent to the client saying, um, "Hey, Anman, listen, I just emailed you a great resource for new construction. Please check your inbox." Now, that text message is not designed to get a response. Like, I'm not texting you, asking you a question, or wanting you to respond, and that's on purpose because I don't want to intrude on whatever you got going on. But it allows me to connect with you on a level that I know you're going to see, and then if that interests you, you're going to go either check the email or you'll just be appreciative that, oh yeah, Gus sent me an email about new construction. Okay, I was thinking about that. I don't have time for that right now, but okay, great. Whatever, right? But a couple weeks or a couple months down the line, right, when you're still reaching out and texting or calling or whatever, like it's hey, this is the person who's been giving me resources, has been really trying to help me out, not the person who's trying to sell me on their service or anything like that, right? It's not any of that. It's just, hey, did you get that resource? Did you get that email? Hey, I'm texting you this link. Did you see that? Right? Those kinds of things. So, I try to be as strategic as possible on, on when I make any asks. So typically what'll happen is if they respond to any of those text messages, then I start asking questions about their journey because now we're in a conversation, right? So if they text message, and even if it's oh, thanks so much, I appreciate it, right? Like, oh, okay, hey, no worries, I'm happy to help. Hey, what's your timeline, right? And then now just they're in a conversation. They're probably going to respond to that. They're probably going to go ahead and respond to that. So, you know, when looking at your internet lead options, just make sure that you're taking into consideration kind of where they are in the process. Does that make sense?
Makes a ton of sense. Absolutely.
Now, what are some things that you're like? What would be? Because I know I don't want to take up too much of your time either. But just that we make sure we address everything. Was there anything out of this session that was like that you really would like to hear or learn about or walk away with?
Well, this has been extremely informative. I think that some of the main takeaways that you know that help is to take a step back before actually implementing something and understanding the frame of mind from the consumer, from the people that we're trying to help.
Right.
I think one of the main reasons why I was so apprehensive to implementing this type of lead generation was it's because sometimes it seems intrusive, and
Hmm.
I'm the type of person that, I'm very hardworking, I like to help people, but sometimes you don't want to intrude on people, and that's why
Absolutely.
I didn't want to implement this in the beginning. I just didn't feel comfortable with it.
Sure.
Now, understanding this, that, it's like we're hitting this from the beginning is like, yes, this isn't personal. We still don't know each other, but I'm coming from contribution. I'm here to help you and to give you some resources. And if you want to work with me, I'm here for you. And
Yeah.
if it's not a good fit, then it's okay too. It's fine too. So I think that that frame of mind helps me implement things more. Like debunking some limiting beliefs. Uh,
Sure.
I think that to me it's huge. It may not sound like an application it is, but having the right mind frame around it
Oh, sure.
may make me more effective in the execution. And understanding the different channels and what type of message that channel may require to be more engaging and to have a higher conversion ratio in the
Absolutely.
end. And also, you know, once we understand that frame, it's what type of automations to be more effective and to have a clear process in
Yeah.
executing this.
For sure, for sure. No, and I think that understanding the client, and where they're coming from and where they are in their journey, I think that makes a huge difference. It really makes an impact because you're talking to them about like in the category at least as close as possible to where they are in their journey, and I think that kind of makes a difference in terms of how you're able to further engage with them in the future, which is for me has been super impactful. This is not something I invented. This is something that I saw others do and I implemented myself. So it was super helpful for me. Um, the other thing, another just I guess you can say, I want to say trick, but I guess it's a trick. Um, Another thing that just for reference, right? Once you create the content pieces, okay, um, the timing of them is really going to be based on their timeline. So, for example, if you have someone that is a year out versus 6 months out, but they're still like not sure about where they are in the process, you may want to, for let's say a Facebook lead, for example, you may not necessarily want to send them, even though they say 6 months, they're still unsure. You still may not want to send them the resources yet because they're not sure where they are, right? You want them to kind of dream a little more. So the same campaign that you make for the 12 month, you just make for the 6 month, but with shorter intervals, right? So it's the same, you know, same emails, same text messages. You're just changing the timeline of how often they're receiving it. Because, if it's 6 months down the line, they may be ready to move after 4 months, and you may want to be talking to them by month, three, 3 months prior, 2 months prior. You might want to be having that conversation to see if they're ready to rock and roll. And if they're not, then obviously, then you would extend, you would kind of adjust your content flow. So typically um, having a campaign that's like the timeline of that campaign is slightly different. So I have a 15-day, a 30-day, and a 90-day. When I was doing my residential, that's kind of how I set that up, because if someone was ready to rock and roll, I'd want them to get that information as much as possible within that 15-day window, because they're gonna need that, right? But if someone was like, 3 months down the line or 4 months down the line, I'd put them on a 90-day and then just let them kind of simmer for a bit. But I wouldn't even get into that until they were closer. So in between is going to be more like, if they're like, oh, next year, then I just maybe giving them a call to just give them maybe an update on what's going on in the market. Maybe I might contact them for like 4th of July, Thanksgiving, just holidays and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
and I know
you
and I
but
know we're coming to the end, but I think that's something that may be helpful. I just thought about this. I've done some lead generation, but
yeah,
something that you may want to touch on for somebody that maybe hasn't done it is this isn't an immediate thing. It will lead to consistency in the end, but it needs to work. It needs to build onto. So if you can talk to that in structuring and not being frustrated in the beginning, but trusting the process.
right.
Uh, if you
Yeah,
can talk about
patience is
that for
a
a little bit.
yeah, nah, patience is definitely a virtue, specifically with anything that has a longer sales cycle. So, if you're not buying immediately and you kind of have to nurture a client for a little while, yeah, that consistency is going to make a difference, because if they're constantly seeing you and seeing you related to the thing that they're interested in, then they're going to be much more comfortable working with you in the future, because when they're ready, and that this is not always the case, but when they're ready, they're going to go with the person they feel most comfortable with, typically, right? And sometimes, if you're not consistently in front of them, then they're going to forget about you, and then whoever they talk to is the person they're going to go with. So you really want to try and build a relationship as much as possible. And for me, what's been super helpful for me is finding areas of value. Like whenever I call somebody, or text them or send them an email. It's just to bring value, and just make sure that I want to make this absolutely clear. Value doesn't have to be, oh, I'm giving you something. It could just be like, hey, a text message. I do this all the time, and I get great responses from it. Hey, Hinman, listen, I was just thinking about you. I just want to say I'm about to jump into this really great week. I wanted to wish you an amazing week this week. Have an awesome week. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Peace. Right? Just to connect and be like, hey, have an amazing week. Have an awesome day. Like, stuff like that. Like, just out the blue. Just make it seem like it's out the blue. It doesn't have to be. It can totally be timed in your process, but just make it seem like you just randomly woke up and you thought about your client and you're sending them a text message because you thought about them. People really connect well with that. Like, people are like, oh, that's nice. That was nice. You didn't have to do that. That was nice. Like, I'm not trying to sell you. I'm not trying to tell you anything. I'm not trying to share anything. I'm just trying to say, hey, have an amazing day. Like, today you're going to be spectacular. Have a great week, right? Those kinds of things. Like, try to inspire some really like good mojo, because that positivity is going to make them feel good, and it's going to, make them even more so want to work with you, because you're like, oh, he's such a positive guy. Like, oh my goodness, every time Herman, he's sending me text messages, he sends me cool emails, and he sent me a happy holiday, whatever. Like, it's always positive. Like, it's always a positive experience. So I would definitely say, try to find those little nuggets of relationship that have nothing to do with work.
That's phenomenal. I think that's great. Mixing it up, and like, coming from contribution. You're here
Yeah,
to help
absolutely. Coming from
establish a
contribution.
relationship. Yep.
Yeah. So I definitely think that's the way to go. I mean, that's been my strategy, and it's been successful for me. And I'm a big relationship person, and those relationships help to create other relationships. They help me both personally and in my business. So when dealing with this type of transaction, it's relationship based, right? It's not just about the house you're helping them to buy. It's hey, listen, I want to help you, your family. I want to make sure that you guys have a good place to live. I want you to be proud about what you're doing. So that's really it. So I'm going to go ahead and say I really appreciate your time. Thank you for contacting me and having us engage in this conversation. So I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to hearing some feedback on what you implement.
Absolutely, man. And thank you so much for having me. Not only are you a great professional, you're a great guy. I always enjoy spending time that we've spent together. You're a cool dude, and yeah, let's do it again sometime. Thank you so
Awesome,
much for
awesome.
everything.
It's my pleasure, brother. All right, man. Well, listen, have a great day, and look forward to hearing some good stuff.
So that was Hermang, great guy. I was glad to actually have a conversation with him. Listen, if you guys have some other thoughts on things that are working for you, please make sure that you leave a comment below, and please like, please share. I'd love for you guys to subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.